So we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order of the Bennington Board of Education for today, October 9th. We will begin this evening with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty. Welcome. Thank you all for coming this evening. We're excited that you're here. We will begin our meeting with public forum, which is your opportunity to speak with the board about anything you'd like. We do have these orange sheets in the back of the room. If anybody is going to speak this evening, we'll just have one so far. All right. Our meetings are governed by the Nebraska Open Meetings Act, a copy of which is located on the south wall. My verified publication notification. Thank you, Jody, for that. With public forum this evening, I'll ask you to come forward when I call your name. Just a reminder, our time period is 5 minutes per person, and we'd like to keep personnel or student topics out of the public forum, so those items should be addressed separately with the administration. All right, the first person this evening is Doug, is it Kibbe? All right, Doug, if you come forward and just state your name and your address, or if you're a Bennington resident.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Yes, my name is Doug Kibbe, and I am a Bennington resident. I have been out here since 2006. I live just about a mile from here. I appreciate you hearing me this evening, and this is my first time attending this meeting, even though I've been out here for 17 years, and that doesn't necessarily reflect well on me, but it does say that I am interested in this particular evening's meeting, in that I understand we are going to be discussing the upcoming high school bond issue that I think that Dr. Kloss is going to bring up this evening. Having gone through a few of these bond issue discussions, I certainly remember just, I think last November timeframe when we went through this, in the review of the agenda, looking at this evening, I saw that it mentioned on there that there's been an addressing over the last couple of months in discussing this, that the addressing of community concerns about this for the from the previous proposal as we went through this just a short time ago. I'm interested in that, and Dr. Kloss, will you be able to this evening discuss what some of those community concerns were? I don't know in this forum if we are able to have any kind of a two-way discussion at this point, or am I just allowed to address my concerns?
Yeah, typically you share your concerns with us, and
Sounds
we don't have a dialogue because we have a set agenda.
Sounds good. Okay, what I would like to ask is if Dr. Kloss could discuss what some of those community concerns were that over those several months of planning for that were. Because what I would hate to see is, as we go forward with this, as we come towards a spring 2024 election where the next high school proposal would come up as a potential bond issue, that what we went through last time, those community concerns come forward, that we don't address the things that the community brought up. And I remember two of them that were very big concerns don't get addressed this time around. I'm sure that the board with the newly elected members probably had those well documented and hopefully well vetted as you just went through these months of work on this. But I, just as a member on the outside, now looking in, as I mentioned, not having been to these meetings, just am wanting to make sure that those concerns, since the last time that this was brought up, are well looked into. And I think the two of those, as I looked into all the traffic on social media and such, were that there was, I think, a a lot of concern talking about the principle of all the bonds out there for an extensive amount of time. I think it was perhaps 10, 15, 20 years that the principal on these existing bonds was not being paid down. And if I recall correctly, that the research done by people outside of this community, it was showing that there might even have to be bonds taken out to pay down on interest on bonds. So that seemed to be a little bit scary for people, and that was one of the reasons the bond issue for the new high school was perhaps scary for people, and it didn't pass. So if principal is not being taken care of, I certainly would like to hear if that's being addressed this evening. The other thing that I think that was scary for people last time that this came around for the new high school was that there perhaps were some aspects of the new high school that folks saw as being perhaps a little bit of superfluous, if I could use that term, that were not necessarily needed because perhaps not as many of the sports facilities and such were needed because they were already existing in facilities that were in the area already. So if those two areas could be addressed in your discussion this evening, Dr. Kloss, as community concerns, I'd be greatly appreciative. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Kennedy.
you.
Did anyone arrive late that would like to speak? We still have time. All right, got it. All right, the first item before the board is the consent agenda, which includes approval of the agenda, approval of the minutes. We have multiple meetings in September related to the budget. So from September 11th and from September 25th, the special meeting approving the budget. We also have presentation of the October bills for payment, which I believe Jeremy and Tim had. Tim wasn't able to be here this evening, but Jeremy has agreed to cover that item. And then personnel resignations and hirings. So I believe, do you want to go first with the report on the bills?
Sure. Had a couple big expenditures this month, replaced some boilers and also paid out the premium for workman's comp. Also, the board might recall, we've been looking at a bus and a van. We acquired those and made the payments, purchased those in October also.
Thank you. All right, I believe there is a motion.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Jeremy. What do you call the roll?
Allison?
Yes.
Jeremy?
Yes.
Sorry. Christie?
Yes.
Kara?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
All right, motion passes. We will now move to our reports and presentations to the board, starting with our administrative reports. And I believe first up is the elementary report with Mr. Boyce. Welcome, thank you for being here.
Good evening, ladies
Busy
and gentlemen.
time.
All right, Chad Boyce, principal at Anchor Point Elementary. I just say good evening to all of you. In the elementary board report, you're going to see the updated numbers. We still are currently getting kids moving into the area. Not as maybe as high as we have in the past, but they are still coming. The last couple of weeks has been busy in our elementary schools. We have our annual fundraisers. The elementary only does one fundraiser a year. That fundraiser funds the entire PTO budget for that entire year. So we do have some very generous numbers up there. Our community is always very supportive. We use that this year. I can only speak to Anchor Point. We've added a gaga ball pit, a slide. We just added a whole bunch of trees for some shading and landscaping around the area. So our PTO does a great job putting that money back into the schools. And then finally, homecoming week was just here. And that's one thing that the 5 elementaries all take pride in, is we all do participate in homecoming week. We even found a way to finagle our fundraiser in there, so it wasn't too distracting of a week, but it's always fun to celebrate with our high school friends. So any questions for the elementary?
Just thank you to the PTOs and the volunteers that went in to put all that together, and the staff. I know that's extra work on everybody, so.
And one thing that we did this year is we switched it up from our typical format, which has taken a little bit more off the top. And this year, all 5 PTOs have worked together in a very connected manner to make sure that they're all kind of moving in the same direction. So All right, it's great to see all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up is middle school with Mrs. Rucker. Welcome.
Hello. Hi, I'm Renee Rucker, the principal at Bennington Middle School. Tonight I would like to put our focus on our PBIS, or Positive Behavior Intervention and Supports. We know that what gets recognized gets repeated, so at the middle school level, we really work on focusing on acknowledging students' positive behaviors. That was a foundation of when we set the middle school, and even when we split, we have many of the similar things in place, though we put our own twist and do them a little differently. One of the things that we do is we have Badger Bucks, or Tucky Tickets is at the other middle school, and those are unexpected acknowledgements of expected behavior. So maybe it's if the students fill out their planners right away and the teacher notices, okay, we'll give a Badger Buck or a Tucky Ticket to those students, or for being on time, or for being kind to another student in the hallway. Other things that we do is we have Learn, Grow, Lead. That is part of our mission and vision statement. Bennington Middle School acknowledged 34 students for that first Hexter. Bennington South will do theirs every other Hexter. So it's a little bit different, but it's really the same amount of students. We were very excited. Both schools had their academic achievement celebrations. BSMS had 82% of their students qualify, and BMS had 77% of their students qualify. And typically that's just like during our SST that we recognize them, we take them outside or do an activity and then do a treat. And our PTO does do a great job of supporting some of these activities as well as just our foundation and different other people in the building. Questions on that?
Thank you.
Thank you.
High school with Mr. Liberty.
President Lee, Bennington High School principal, highlighting a few items. This past Saturday, the band program, Mr. Cody, our band boosters, our parents, and our musicians hosted 17 bands and a marching band invite, so no small feat to pull that off. Marching started at 11 and concluded at 4 o'clock, so quite the day. Upcoming events, a few things of note that are typically fun and well attended. Leo Club is hosting the annual Badger Boot Night on Wednesday, October 25th from 4:30 to 6:30. So those in the room, those watching online that want to get some practice trick-or-treating in, just head to the auxiliary gym on the 25th, and 4:30 to 6:30 you'll get all the candy you want. Then we have the vocal music concert the following night, which is always a great event. Mr. Hankey and the students typically are in costumes and perform a set of tunes starting at 7 o'clock in the Fine Arts Center. Questions for me? We also celebrated homecoming week with the 5 elementaries and 2 middle schools 2 weeks ago.
Thank you. It was a great celebration.
It-
All right, next up is student services with Mr. Wambach.
Hello, thanks for having me here. Dan Bombeck, Director of Student Services. Couple quick highlights on our end of things. High Ability Learner Program has been busy for the first part of the school year. The numbers you see here reflect numbers that are currently in place. They're in the testing process, so we'll be updating those numbers as we get through the end of October. But it is kind of neat to see some of the activities they've done posted in the schools with what they've been learning. The other quick thing I'd like to highlight is just our special education numbers. We'll put it down on the page. As you can see, we've grown in the various categories just a little bit. You'll also see that we have a little bit of increase in our percent special education population. This is reflective of what we're seeing in the state as a whole, so not unique to Bennington by any means. Any questions?
Thank you. All right, we'll take an operations report from Dr. Blumenkamp.
Good evening, Matt Blumenkamp, Assistant Superintendent of Operations. Just a couple of things to highlight in that report. Had a chance to meet with each of our youth group presidents here this last month, soccer, basketball, wrestling, football, and Baseball Association. Talked about facility use, being able to provide opportunities for those organizations to have field space, gym space, wrestling space. As we continue to grow as a district, they continue to grow as organizations, and finding space for them to practice is a challenge. And so we want to make sure that we're equitable and consistent with how we do that. And so I had an opportunity to meet with all 5 of those individuals, talked about some things about safety and security, just how we can help with safety and security during their events, things such as just even cleanup. How do they help clean up if they have things that get messed up, whether it's out at the football field or it's in the wrestling room. So just little things to help them be more efficient, to help us, to help our custodians, to help our administrators at the buildings as well. And so we're going to continue to have those discussions and that dialogue to be able to provide as much opportunity as we can equitably with those organizations. Secondly, I think the last paragraph that I have, maybe second to last paragraph, talks about Safe to Help. Safe to Help is an online anonymous reporting system that we've had here in Bennington for, I think, 4 years. It's through Boys Town. The state of Nebraska had a grant that was available that we utilized. It's a free program for students and for parents to anonymously report really anything of concern, whether it's bullying or it's drugs and alcohol or it's abuse, so on and so forth. And so when that happens, there's an application that can be on a student's phone, can be on a parent's phone. It's on all of our web pages. This goes out in our communication that Mrs. Hahn sends out each month. And those reports then go to that building principal. They come to me and they come to our school resource officer. So whether it's a 5th grader that reports it, and that 5th grader's building principal gets that ping, and it comes to me and it comes to Deputy Raymaker, or it's at the high school and it goes to Dr. Lamberty and myself and Deputy Raymaker. We follow up on all of those reports last year. Last school year, I think we had 263 reports. They don't all come between 8 o'clock in the morning and 4 o'clock in the afternoon. There are times when it's 11:30 at night on a Saturday night, and if we read those and we deem that this is credible, we get on the phone with each other and we need to make phone calls home to parents at 11:30 at night or Sunday afternoon before we do that. Sometimes those are hard phone calls, but we'd rather err on the side of caution and have an upset parent that maybe got woken out of bed rather than have a student that's in an unsafe situation. And so it's been a really good program for us. We continue to use that. We let the students know, listen, this is available. We still hope that you feel you have good relationships with your teachers. That's someone that you can report things to as well, your counselors, your principals. But this is just one more avenue that we have available to try to help our students make sure that they're safe, or if they feel like a peer that they have isn't safe, that they can report it anonymously. So, questions that I have an answer?
I guess one general question, the 260, do we find out most of those are legitimate and are things that need to be done?
Unfortunately, at times there are some false reports that come through more than we like, where students are actually reporting things falsely to try to split their fiddle with their peers. To maybe to cyberbully their peers at the same time. And so sometimes that takes us some time to sift through that to find out what's credible and what's not. The last thing we're gonna do is pull a student out of class and search them if somebody said on an anonymous tip, so-and-so has, drugs or a weapon in school, and we're going to follow up on that. And that doesn't come to be true. That's a tough phone call home to that child's parent. Pull them out. There is a way that we can go back and track through Boys Town if we have to. If we find out that people are making tips that are not credible or that are false, we do have the ability to go back and look through that with Boys Town. And we've let our students know that this year, and a little more proactive, letting them know that as well. So in the first quarter, it feels as if we don't have quite as many false reports as we've had in the previous year. But that's my opinion. I don't know if I can speak for the other buildings.
Just a smile.
Smile. Other question. It's a great program, and we're willing to deal with the false reports to be able to provide avenues for our students and for our parents.
Yeah. Are always some pretty significant things reported through it that were
Absolutely.
legitimate.
Absolutely.
Able to address.
Yep. Yeah, whether we need to get counseling services set up, or we need to contact more law enforcement. If we need to, launch an investigation with our school resource officer, it takes us in a lot of different avenues. And I think it helps keep our schools safe and it helps our students feel supported. And hopefully our families feel supported. And just another avenue that's anonymous, so they're able to feel comfortable making that report if they're not comfortable doing it with a teacher or a counselor or principal. Again, we want them to do that. We hope they have great relationships with those faculty members, but there are just sometimes, depending on what time of the day it is, it's 10 o'clock on a Sunday night, those people aren't available. This is an opportunity to have. Other questions I can answer?
Yeah, how are we looking on recruitment, open positions?
So I went to a job fair today at the University of Nebraska at Lincoln. Quite a few schools, lots of metro schools. I was a little nervous when it started. We were quiet, and I think what they had is they had everybody in a group that was ready to go. They let them all out at once, and it came through. I had about 30 people that came through. I have some staff that are some prospective employment that good students that are graduating this semester that are looking for jobs, and we have a few positions that are open that semester this year that we approved last year. Quite a few that are looking for jobs next year, and we have quite a few that are looking for student teaching placement. So spent a lot of time this afternoon being able to go through why Bennington is attractive. We think we have a good package as far as compensation and benefits. Talked about our mentor program and mentee program for our students as well. Cadre was down the line for me at UNO as well, and Mrs. Painting works hard to get cadre applicants set up here at Bennington, so I had a chance to visit with that as well. So hoping that brings in some talent. I think our battery just went out. I hope that brings in some talent. I do have a job here at Wayne State College next week as well, and then one at Midland right after the first of the year. And then we were at Kearney. Dr. Tyndall was at Kearney a couple weeks ago. Had an opportunity to visit with some prospective teachers as well, as far as special education, which is an area that we're really looking into. That's an area where if we can find somebody right away, we want to try to look at getting them hired as soon as we can in semester 3. So I felt positive about today. It was Mr. Boyce and I went last year to Lincoln. I had quite a few more conversations today than the both of us had last year.
Is there a common theme which prospective employees are asking about our district, or is it kind of all over the board?
Some of them don't know who we are. Even if you go as far west as Lincoln, all of a sudden they say, "Where's Bennington?" "Oh, I thought that was up by Blair." I said, "Well, it is by Blair, but it's on the outskirts of Omaha." But I felt really positive as we opened up our flyer and walked through where we're at with our starting pay and what we offer for health insurance and how that works with cash in lieu. What they seem to have a lot of positive remarks on is that we want to try to help them go back to school and work on an endorsement or a master's degree. I heard over and over, like, "Yeah, you guys have that? That's important. Let me write my name down." And so again, I thought that today went well. I was a little nervous to start the day, but once it got going well. So,
Thank you.
great.
Yeah, thank you.
Anything else?
So all 30 are going to apply?
I had either resumes or there's a QR code where they can sign in. So I made sure they knew where our application link was on our webpage.
I turned on my speaker just for that joke.
Anything else I can answer?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Hoagie, you're up with curriculum, instruction, and assessment.
Thank you, Rob. Any of that running?
Thank you. Lee Hoagie, Assistant Superintendent, CIA. Tonight's report talks a lot about intervention services that we provide in our elementary building. The first part, you'll see a chart of scores, and this is part of the Nebraska Reading Act. And our students who are not hitting these benchmark spots, we build an extra plan for these students, which we call an individual reading improvement plan. And that's managed by their classroom teacher, Could be their special ed teacher, or could be their reading specialist, depending upon what kind of services they're receiving. So I'm really excited to share with you that we have decreased the number of IRIPs that we have for this fall term right now. So our students are making good progress in reading. We also have reduced the number of students who are needing services from our reading and math specialists right now. Have been pretty stable, but we had a slight decrease in both those services. So overall, it looks like a large number of 492 students, but those can be duplicates. So students can get services with an independent reading plan, as well as with our reading specialist, as well as with our math specialist. So an individual student could be on here 3 times. You notice there's lots of asterisks, and that's because any group that's below 10, we protect those numbers, so it's not identifiable. If you happen to know the 4th grade at Anchor Point, who are those kids? So save a little student privacy there. So we're excited about that information coming out now.
Dr. Bogey, can I interrupt you just for a second?
Absolutely.
What is it with second grade? I mean, there's like 197. Second grade alone is.
Great
Can
question.
you remind me? I know there's something special about this.
There is something special about 2nd grade. As 1st graders move into 2nd grade, the test we use is the MAP test. And the MAP test changes from a listening comprehension, where it reads everything to students through headphones, to the students having to read independently. So it's a big challenge and a big step up for students as they move into 2nd grade. So throughout the year, we'll see that number improve as kids get that piece figured out, but that's where we see that big jump.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Absolutely. No, we have lots of other things going on throughout the district. We've got some professional development coming up. October 11th is an early dismissal day, and we're getting ready for parent-teacher conferences, as well as some trainings for different things we have going on. And then the 19th, we're especially focusing on continuing to get our elementary teachers up to speed with our new ELA curriculum. So we're working on that implementation. And then the secondary teachers that day will be working on rigor, and that's with Karen Hess, who they started the school year with as well. So 2 different things going on, but very busy days and lots of learning for our teachers as well. Any questions I can answer for you? Great, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, Dr. Claus, will you give us your superintendent report?
Yeah, first thing I had was just about the high school #2 project. Over the last month, prior to the last month, our building and finance committee had worked together to try to assemble our project stakeholder team. And so now that we've got DLR, Housing Construction, DA Davidson on board, we spent the last several weeks really digging into the potential project and what that could look like. And so just looking at the project scope, trying to address some of those community concerns and figuring out what those were and what the next project could look like, assessing our financial situation and what we could afford or what that looks like, and just ensuring that the final project also has all the necessary elements for us, not just now, but long into the future as well. And so it's really been a lot of information gathering. It's been a lot of trying to figure out what next steps should look like now that the team is all assembled. Our hope is over the next few weeks, we'll be working with the Building and Finance Committee, we'll be working with the Curriculum Committee, and hopefully able to bring at least a draft A or an initial proposal back to the board as a whole in November. And then start seeking community feedback from that proposal as well in November. That is an incredibly fast process, and a lot of that's just due to the circumstances. We have 3 new board members last January. Dr. Hawk resigned. I got hired in July. I finally had my feet underneath me after a couple months there. And so, and then we didn't necessarily have our project stakeholder team all together. And so now that we have them, we're trying to hit the ground running as fast as we possibly can. I just want a reminder, the fall of 27 is kind of an important day. If we were able to have a high school #2 project lined up and ready to go, that's about the earliest that we would be able to do it. And so our enrollment numbers dictate at that time, if we had absolutely no growth, not one kid moved into the district, on that day at the high school, we'd be 196 students over capacity at 117%. Using really conservative, modest growth estimates, we'd be about 242 students over capacity, or 121% of that building. And so just due to circumstances, we're probably a little behind the 8 ball to get ourselves rolling on that 27, which is probably why we are moving so fast over the last month and hopefully the next couple months. But the need is there and it's definitely coming. So appreciate our building finance committee. Appreciate DLR and Hausman and DA Davidson, because a lot of them got onboarded and then it was like, by the way, we're going to work like right now. So we got to start meeting. So they've been in quite a bit, and we're hoping to assemble a nice initial draft and bring to the building and finance committee over the next couple weeks, and then the curriculum committee, and then hopefully back to the full board at that time. If we are able to do it in that amount of time and things are looking okay, if the board wanted to continue forward, you'd have to adopt a bond resolution. It's actually like 8 Fridays, but basically 2 months prior to the election. So that's something to keep in mind. There is the May primary, and so that would, April is blocked out, so March would be the month prior to that. So that's something for us to keep in mind as we move forward. Second thing I had on there was an enrollment update. October 1 is an important enrollment day for us because that's when everything becomes official. And so that's the day that we always look at our enrollment, because it starts to calculate in the state aid and everything else for the following year. So it's one piece of the puzzle. This year, our enrollment on October 1st was 4,160. That won't end up being the exact number at the end because just some calculations would be pretty close for us. So that's the number we're starting to plug in for our state aid for the following year. The middle column is the yearly growth, and I think this kind of shows what's going to take place at the high school very soon. Our middle school grew 999 students this year. Obviously, they're not going to stay in middle school forever, and so they will be going to the high school soon. And so while maybe the high school you saw a 26 student increase this year, that 99 is coming as well along with others. And so our building capacity at the elementary is pretty good right now at 84. Middle school obviously is lower with the new building just built last year. The high school, I want to say, was like 85 last year or something. It's at 90 this year. And obviously we're going to that 117 by 2027 with no growth, nobody moving in. And so, the building capacity of limits I thought were pertinent as well. With that, kind of tie into the last point, which is our state aid update. Now that we have that final number, just a couple of things, because as we talked through our budget retreat, we had a lot of assumptions in there, and so those are going to slowly materialize throughout the course of the year. Now that we have the 4160, we initially estimated 220, so it is a little bit lower. And so there's about 800,000 on that needs side of the formula that will not come in equalization aid. A reminder, we had this in there before, but our new school adjustment. And so when we opened Bennington South and Stratford in the same year, we received 2.5 million as additional state aid for opening the 2 buildings. This year, 23-24, that gets cut in half, so we're receiving 1.25 million. Next year, it goes to 0. And so we've been factoring in that the whole time, but I just wanted to continue to make sure that we understand it's a little bit unique year, next year. And then along with that, our student growth correction. So we have to put in what we think we're going to grow, and then we get paid some amount of state aid on that, and then it comes back the following year and says, what did you actually grow? And then, either takes that money away or gives us more if we grew more than those estimates. And so there's going to be a little bit of a correction on there. Long story short, we've kind of known that 24-25, we're going to be reducing in state aid. We've been pretty upfront with that from the beginning. That is still going to be the case. And, that's how the system is set up. The system is set up for when valuations go up or there is more local resource that the state's portion is going to decrease. And so we are going to see that again in 24-25, and we're just going to become more reliant on property taxes as we move forward. And that's how the system is set up. So I just wanted to kind of give that as a reminder now that these bits of information are starting to materialize here over the next couple of months.
Thank you.
Questions?
Questions from anyone?
Yeah, so, thank you, Dr. Kloss. So when it comes to the bond issue, if we do pass a resolution here at the board, wouldn't it make more sense to try and put it on the May ballot during the primaries versus trying to move it into March?
There's
Special election?
There's pros and cons to both. With a March, it would almost guarantee that we'd be able to have the construction completed by the 2027 school year. If you go back to May, it might get a little bit dicey in there. It doesn't mean it couldn't be done, but it would become less clear for sure and give us a lot slimmer margin for error. You know, on a primary ballot compared to a special ballot has its own considerations as well. And those are probably the two main things for us to think about. One thing we talked about in the Building and Finance Committee, I believe, was let's push on the March, and we're on a tight time frame. And if something happens or we don't feel comfortable, that allows us to go backwards to May. If we go on a May timeline, all of a sudden we're not comfortable, now we're pushing ourselves even farther. And so that was kind of the initial plan, is we'll push until there's, to get to that March, until there's a reason that we might not be able to make it, and then we kind of have a backup plan as well.
What's the turnout look like when you do a special election like that in March versus doing a primary?
I have all the statistics go with this, I don't have them up, but it kind of depends if it's a presidential primary or non-presidential primary, who's on the ballot. So I did a quick historical analysis of what that could look like, or has in the past for us. Actually, a special does pretty well, and it should be fairly close to what it would be in a presidential primary year. But who knows, you know, when that May primary shows up and what's on the ballot might dictate the turnout.
Right.
But the special, obviously, if you were going to vote on the special, then you're worried about that particular item.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes. I just want to thank you for your efforts. I know it's been a lot getting here in July and taking all this in, so thank you for taking a fresh look at everything and looking at our enrollment numbers and our financial data, making sure you're providing us with the best information. So I'm excited about the next couple months. I know it's going to be a lot of work, but excited the team's been put together and we're starting the process. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right, next up are the committee reports. Building and Finance is first. And this is from the September meeting. And this, Jeremy chimed in, but this was the meeting where we met with the various stakeholders from the bond underwriting firms and tried to assemble our team for the high school project proposal. And we had a good meeting with both Piper Sandler and D.A. Davidson, and the committee voted unanimously to move forward with D.A. Davidson. So excited to have them on board and some fresh ideas, and I think that'll be good for the project. So
They've been a good partner so far. I've enjoyed working with them.
good. Anything else to add, Jeremy, on that, please?
No. For me.
Any questions from anybody else? Okay. All right, the next committee report would be the curriculum committee. This looks like a lot of minutes. Must have been a lot of activity.
There's a lot of.
Yes. Somebody want to update us from the committee?
Yeah, I can. I mean, it was a lot of just putting processes in place. We did talk about.
Kara, I don't think they can hear you. I'm sorry, that microphone's far away.
Sorry. We talked about putting some processes in place that we probably didn't have before, and kind of some of those key positions that we need that we could just move forward at certain points. And I think we'll talk about that later. We talked more about that. And then also we talked about the guest speakers and presenters. We went a little bit through that and maybe what some things that educators and administrators could look at and kind of have a guideline for how we go through the process of approving a speaker that would come into the school. So we talked about some really good things. Help me out, guys. Did I miss anything?
I don't think you missed anything at all, and I'm glad we're gonna talk about, I'm excited for some of the planning that we've done for moving forward that will streamline our processes and give a little more autonomy to our administrators and to our district to hire people when people are available, so.
And I think another thing that we talked about that'll help out with the bond issue too, is we talked about projections for enrollment. So there's been I guess in the past, they've used maybe like 3 or 4 different methods. So we're trying to narrow that down and figure out a way to be conservative for those projections. The cohort, I think, was one of them that Dr. Ploss brought that we talked about, and it seemed to be pretty conservative. And we look at 3, 5, and 8 years down the road based on those projections. So that'll help out when we talk about the bond as well. So, yeah, it's great.
Thank you for the good meeting.
Thank you.
All right, the policy committee. This is a long list of updates on policies, which I think we're going to talk about some of these going forward. Jeremy, do you want to chime in on this one?
Yeah, we kind of spent a lot of time going on, again, what are the policies that we're required to have there for state law versus the ones that we were putting into place. I don't know if Dr. Claus can remember which ones are which, I can't off the top of my head, but,
I didn't mean to put you on the spot, I just wasn't there, so I didn't want to relay something that didn't happen, so
Yeah,
you want to chime in, Dr. Claus?
basically, we just reviewed, started with the 300 section that we had talked about previously, and then had all of these different policies, either from NASD or recommended from the administration. Everybody looked them over and vetted them and asked questions, and Mr. Bomback is there helping out on the special education side as well for us, and then we have several of them brought forward tonight.
All right, any other questions on that, or we can move forward to the coordinator reports? Okay. The coordinator report this evening is Mr. Edens, talking about facilities. Lots of good pictures this time. I appreciated that.
Good evening, Jeremy Edens, Coordinator of Facilities and Transportation. Tonight's report is about facilities. First slide here, we're going to see. It's kind of a spreadsheet that I maintain. The first section you'll see up there is the high school. The bottom one is the middle school. So red means that basically that area or that piece of equipment has exceeded its life expectancy. Green means we're good to go. Yellow means it's something we might want to start talking about. I'm not going to cover these too in depth because I have some areas that I want to highlight. One more. All right. So, Bennington High School, as we all know, was built in 5 phases. The original phase was in 2005. The building itself has been maintained very well. However, there are several major pieces of equipment or materials that are at the end or near the end of their life expectancy. The first one that I'm most concerned about is going to be the roof of the 2005 and 2009 sections. So that roof is a modified bitumen roof. Modified bitumen roof is basically an asphalt roof. It's designed for low slope, which our building does have. However, it does have some downfalls, being leaking, bubbling in areas. Heat absorption is not very good. Difficulty of installation, and more prone to ponding, and then the high cost of repairs. So I do have a couple estimates from roofing companies, and I think it'd be prudent of the district to keep in mind that we should probably budget $700 to $1.1 million in the near future to do replacements on the high school roof. As Mrs. Lebowski stated, we have some awesome pictures, so evidence of multiple leaks. So the first picture on the left, you can see those leak repairs. Ponding water over there on the right, that's an area that's going to end up turning into a leak. Evidence of bubbling, doesn't show up really well in pictures, but I assure you there's about a 7-inch bubble right in the middle of that picture there. So debris from the asphalt deteriorating and collecting and blowing over in the corners. So again, it doesn't show up really well in pictures, but there's about 4 inches of kind of asphalt shells or whatever you want to call it, built up along the edge. The other one I want to talk about at the high school is going to be the flooring. So 2005 and 2009 sections of the flooring. So the original project was a interface tile, which is basically an inch or 1/112 inch glass back tile. That's going to be a really hard plastic tile. It's not really great for standing on. It's post-industrial recycled materials, but the technology is outdated. Most recent addition at the high school, as well as our newest elementary schools, have a fleece back tile. So this is going to give more cushion for standing and walking. There was a study that I read out there that says it can reduce muscle strain up to 24% compared to hardback tiles. It also provides better acoustics and noise dampening, and it also allows water vapor to escape from the concrete floor below. So I do have images below on the next slide. Again, they don't show up really well in pictures, but I assure you there's a lot of discoloration. So one thing I do, I grew up in kind of the housekeeping and cleaning world in hotels for 15 years. I look at the corners of restrooms and at the corners of like carpeted areas. So over by the lockers right there, you can kind of see what the original carpet looked like. It's going to have the least amount of wear, the least amount of stains. And then if you look towards the center, it's almost a completely different color and completely matted down. The second picture there is just some frame that I saw in a couple of areas. And image number 3 is gonna be another area that's got a really bad discoloration. We've tried to use different chemicals to extract that out. It's just not, it's kind of set in. Another area that I want us to look at and be weary of and possibly budget for is the 2005 HVAC air handler units. So there is about 7 of those units up there that are getting near the end of their life expectancy. Typical life expectancy on those large air handler units are 20 to 25 years. So we're coming up on that, but we should probably start thinking about it maybe 2029 or 2030. I do have some estimates out there, somewhere around 2 to 2.5 million, including installation to replace those. Pine Creek. So Pine Creek is our second oldest elementary school after Bennington Elementary. So in 2008, it's got the same glass back tile that we have at the high school. So again, outdated technology. Would like to look at possibly replacing some of the flooring in that school. It is getting close to the end of its useful life. Heritage parking lot. So the parking lot at Heritage is in pretty bad shape. So in 2021, we started to notice a lot of deterioration. So we went and tarred the joints to try and buy us a couple more years. So that was about $18,000. And then this summer, we did full depth socket replacements of the deteriorated areas for about $16,441. There's still a lot of areas that need to be addressed. We're going to do our best over the winter and prepare for the winter to try and seal up some of these so we don't see any further deterioration. But I would like to do a more in-depth repair of the Heritage parking lot, hopefully this summer, with a budget of $125,000. One thing I did want to do is I wanted to recognize 4 of my guys that came in on Tuesday last week. We had a pretty torrential rainstorm. We had 2 classrooms that ended up getting pretty wet because of that rainstorm. Those guys came in at about 9:30 at night. And the teachers the next morning, if there wasn't fans everywhere, they would have never known. So I want to recognize those guys as well as Dr. Claus and Dr. Blumenkamp for coming in to help extract that water out as well. Any questions looking into?
Thank you, Jeremy. Was that something, I know we talked about the roofs here, especially on the main building. Was that something that we talked about with insurance that we're gonna file the claim? Have we done that yet?
Dr. Blumenkamp has started the process of talking with our adjuster.
So there may be a potential here for the insurance company to help cover some of these things, I guess, potentially.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy. Just a quick note on that, something that we're trying to do internally. Obviously those are some big numbers that Jeremy was talking about. And, there's also big numbers when we start talking about technology and other areas. And so we're currently trying to build out 5-year plans in each of those. And so we can try to fix this cost out instead of, coming with huge numbers all at once. That way we kind of plan and save for maybe some of those bigger item projects. And so we're not quite there yet. We've got a lot going on, but that is our plan, of course, this year to build out 5-year plans and fix this out, something we can budget for every single year.
Thank you.
And I love Jeremy's chart. He does an awesome job. Jeremy's amazing, by the way. But that chart where he showed the green, red, is the same concept for everybody. What do we really need to be worrying about right now? What's upcoming? And then obviously what are we in good shape for? So that was a really good model for everybody.
Thank you.
All right, our spotlight report this evening is Dr. Hoagie on our curriculum personnel proposal process that the committee talked about earlier. Anxious to hear what you guys have come up with.
Thank you. We have been working to update our curriculum and personnel proposal process. So this process has been with us for quite a while. We have a history of initiating this process back in 2004, 2005. The district has been commended several times now over those years for a well-established process and something that really opens the door for lots of different people to have input on future planning as well. The goals you'll see listed out there is to really involve lots of stakeholders, to let, whether it's teachers or parents or even students at times, have had proposals come through this process. It's also a way for new innovative ideas and programs to be introduced and brought to light. They may not always get approved, depending on budget, but at least there's an opportunity to put those out on the table and to let lots of people discuss them as we go. So with this, we are updating our process as we move through this. We've always started at the building level with discussions, brainstorming, needs assessments in every building. It may be patrons who come in with ideas and talk to administrators. And so we always start from that talking point and then turn those into written proposals that get submitted to each of the buildings to where those programs would have the greatest impact. We updated our proposal format that I'll share with you tonight as well. But after they go through the building process, the administrators will pass those on to the district so that everything gets organized and presented to you and to the rest of the committee in a similar fashion. So there's no, whoever does the prettiest doesn't win the prize. It's really, we try to make it very consistent and equitable as we do that. So we have a district proposal committee of 30 members across the district. Every building is represented, every level is represented, every department is represented. And so from that committee, they make a commitment that they are going to do a week of heavy lifting. They're going to read every proposal that has come in. Then we meet and spend an entire day discussing and cussing those. Who's got the best proposal, what's the biggest benefits we'll have, where are deficiencies in those ideas, and what the greatest impact will be. And so there's a lot of passion and time that's put into each of those proposals. And then those committee members are forced into a ranking. They can't rank everything as it's a one we've got to have because we have limits on our budget. So they have to rank every proposal as one, this is an absolute priority. This is a must-have for us. Two, it'd be a nice to have, or three, maybe we need to move this to the back burner for a little bit. But about a third and a third and a third is what they're allowed to vote and rank those on. Getting all over the place here. All right, so once that committee meets, all of their rankings are compiled and averaged together so that we have one master list. And they also, during that process, make comments. Through that discussion process, new ideas are born, or ideas, can we combine something? Could things be worked out with a half-time instead of a full-time position? Could we combine programs at schools? And so lots of comments get bubbled up that we may use through the process with our curriculum and assessment, our curriculum and Americanism committee, to come up with new ideas and how we might modify those so it would best fit what our needs in our district. So after that process of putting it all together, we have traditionally had a workshop in November with the full Board of Education and all of the administrative team to review those proposals with the full board and to talk about priorities, because each principal has their own view of that process, what's coming from their building, what's really important to our district. And so we think that part of the process is really valuable to have that discussion with the board, but we're going to change it from a full board to continue that workshop style that's a little more intimate and more free-flowing discussion. So it's just going to be the committee this year, along with the administrative team, to review those proposals and really be able to have frank discussions of where the needs are and how those rankings came about. So that will all be happening in the month of November. And then following that, the board's Curriculum and Americanism Committee meets monthly as we go through this process and work with Dr. Claus and myself to prioritize those proposals based on what budget is available and what the greatest needs are. And so even though we have a beautiful ranking of things, other priorities may come up. We're doing this in October for next school year, so there may need to be adjustments as we go through the school year, and the committee will work with that. And then bring that back to the full board for approval each month as we make recommendations. So by the time we get through the entire process, every proposal is reviewed by the board and either approved for the way it was written. It could be modified in some way, rather than 3 teachers, it's 2 teachers, or we're not going to institute a full program, we're going to modify it in some way, or we've decided it needs to be on hold at this time. So we're going to decline that proposal at this point. So you'll see here is a new decision analysis matrix. This is something new that Dr. Plaus has introduced to our administrative team. And so we really feel like this makes a thoughtful process to analyze any new decision for our district. Whether it's what's it do for students at the achievement level, to impacting our finances in the district, how much change is impacting each of the different groups, and long-term consequences, and how long will this last. So lots of different pieces under consideration. So what we've done is taken this model and done some guiding questions to update our new proposal application. And so the application, as I told you, we've updated now, and we've had it previewed by a number of groups of teachers and the administrators, and they're really happy with the idea that we've got some good, strong guiding questions now. They feel like we have a logical flow for them to write proposals with. And so all of those pieces in that logic model have been incorporated into our new application. So these went out to schools today and to administrators. So everybody will be meeting with their teams in their buildings to start the process of writing proposals. So another new element of the proposal process, we have always written proposals when we need a new teacher. A principal analyzes the estimated enrollment. They'll say, oh, we've got really big classes coming into this grade level. I need to write a proposal for a 2nd grade teacher, or for an art teacher, or a PE teacher, or whatever area it is, due to enrollment growth. And that really has taken a lot of the time of the committee to talk that through and see, okay, we need to skim this off the top of our budget numbers so that that's our priority. Staffing touches our students at the deepest level. So that's always been our number 1 priority, is how close to the classroom does this proposal hit? And so with this new process that we're trying to update, let's just take that off the top now. And so we've been working on a system for some automatic staffing triggers. We don't want to say growth has gone wild. We've seen some change in the amount of students we're enrolling right now. Things seem to be slowing. And so as Steve had mentioned, we've been working on a 3-year cohort. So when a student comes in kindergarten, we have a class of kindergartners of 300 students. How many students do we have the next year as 1st graders, as 2nd graders? And we tracked that for 3 years. Prior to those 3 years, we had wild growth. We were getting 20% growth in a year, 25% growth. We've seen that level off. And so we're only going back 3 years to try and set this up to level out that growth and not have it influencing our recommendations for teachers. And so we're working with this 3-year cohort, as well as recognizing a slowing in our growth, recognizing housing is slowing right now. And so we hope that we have reasonable enrollment projections when we start on this proposals. We also decided not to do 100% of our target. We see growth happening at this rate for our 1st graders. We're only going to look at 94% of that growth rate and keep our targets at each grade level in the elementary and middle school where we wanted them. We want our classes in kindergarten to be around 20 students. That's ideal if we can have our dream classrooms, everything fits perfectly. It doesn't. different neighborhoods grow differently. We have more kids in certain neighborhoods than other ones. So these are our targets and our ideal numbers. And so we're using that with a reduced target and trying to set us up so that we know in advance. Here's automatic. We know we need this many teachers. So we've done this preliminary. We just shared it with the administrators today. And so they're doing some deep judgments at this point. Did the triggers seem to work? And so we're not going to ask principals to write proposals for anything that was triggered automatically from this new system. So if an elementary principal sees that they've got a big kindergarten and it hit the trigger, they don't need to write a proposal. That'll be first on the list with our curriculum committee. So that's where we're starting this year with a new element as we go. After we get those automatic triggers done, we're hoping that reduces the time that the teacher committee works on this and our curriculum committee as well, and reduces our total number of proposals. We have had up to 90 proposals some years. So this past year we were in the 70s. So we're hoping that this will level that out so that we can really read those proposals carefully and look for new programming. Where's the innovative ideas? What's new curriculum areas that we may like to add to our school that really does a lot for kids? And so those are the things that new proposals need to be on, is new ideas, innovative ideas, or areas of need that are not hit by those triggers. So we anticipate some different looking proposals this year. So other things that we might see in proposals would be interventionalists if we need them. Administrators, we don't have automatic triggers for. Classified staff, we don't typically have triggers for those. So those would be areas that we'll see proposals in that we can give more attention to, because it's really important support to our students, but it's not those immediately in the classroom. So other things we'll see proposals for will be additional needs and innovation, and this really keeps it at a grassroots level. So for teachers that have great ideas for new courses or new programs that we may offer, they can write proposals for that rather than helping principals write proposals for another classroom teacher for their team. So we're excited about the changes as we've gone through this. We don't know how well it'll work until we really get it on the ground and running. So over the next 3 weeks, every building will be writing proposals and getting those submitted. By the end of October, we'll have them all submitted. And early November, the district committee will meet, and then we'll have our workshop between the board's curriculum committee and the administrative team. So we're off and running. So what questions do you have that I might be able to answer about the new ideas and new systems?
I don't have any questions, but just so much thanks and excitement. One of the things that the idea of moving to the triggers will allow for is just that our administrators in our district can go out and get the staff before other districts scoop them up. And so it'll allow for us to be kind of first out there, finding our strong leader of educators. So thank you. And just want to commend you and the team, and thank you for your work. The nuanced detail that they are looking at when we look at these trigger proposal cutoffs was so impressive, and just they've done an amazing job. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree. It's exciting, and it's not set in stone, I think, too, is what we talked about, that we're going to try to see how it works, and I think it's exciting.
Yeah, congratulations, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, it doesn't look like we have any unfinished business, so it's been lots of fun. On to our new business. So we kind of alluded to this in our prior discussion from the policy committee, but lots of new policies. So kick it over to you, Dr. Claus, if you don't mind taking us through some of the changes.
Yeah, I'll probably be pretty high level on these. First one is our 300 section, so that's under A of new business. The policy committee got together might have been a couple months ago now at this
Yeah.
point. We talked about doing this in October when things were a little bit, the budget was behind us, but the policy committee reviewed all the 300 section policies, asked a lot of great questions. We did some research, and at the end of the day, they were pretty comfortable with all the policies. There was one that we felt like needed a revision. That was 301.02, which is succession of authority of the superintendent. The policy just stated it would go to the assistant superintendent. Obviously, we moved to have 2 at this point, so we wanted some clarity with that. And so talking it through, we thought that it made the most sense for ease of transition for that to be the assistant superintendent of operations. Just with their work within the budget and the operations school, it'd be an easier transition. And so that is the only revision of the 300s.
Thank you. I think that's the first reading, so we'll review that again next month for a vote on that particular policy.
You on the B? Okay. Any questions on that? Okay. B was our first reading of the revised policies. And so the first 13 policies, first 13 policies that are listed on there all have to do with special education in some ways. And so whenever special education laws change, obviously our policies have to reflect that. Sometimes federal laws change, which policies reflect that. Other times when we work with NDE, they'll come in and they'll audit our policies. And we've always had language in there, obviously, that says it will operate within best practices or within the state rules, right? Well, now they're starting to also come through and say, we want to see this specific language within these policies as well. And so none of these are necessarily changes to what we have done. They've been embedded within the state guidelines, but now they want to see them within the policy. And so Mr. Bottenbach went through all those and made sure that they were matching our practices already. And if they weren't, we would match them. And did a really nice job of vetting them. So the first 13 are just kind of nuanced for each of those in particular. The 14th policy in a revision is suspension and expulsion. And so this came as a recommendation from NASB based on LB 705, which was the big education bill from last year that coupled about 20 some bills together. We've been waiting for the language, and so we've actually been operating with this in mind. We knew what we had to do, and we've been operating with it, but we didn't actually have the language for the policy yet. And so this particular policy really works on the hearing request if there's an expulsion, the timelines for suspensions that we have to follow, and it also prohibits suspensions for pre-K through 2nd grade students. And so we obviously have been doing that, but we didn't necessarily have the policy to go with it. It's really heavy into the appeal process, so it outlines how many days for each step of the appeal process, what it looks like if you're selecting a hearing officer as well. And so, but it's pretty much heavy on the appeal side of it. The 15th policy in there is our purchasing procedures. We've encountered it several times, and especially in just my time, I kind of noticed this, I guess, where we were having to delay completing maintenance issues or delay doing some vehicle purchases because we needed the approval of the full board. We were taking requests to the Building and Finance Committee. I think of the bus in particular, I can't remember, I think the bus was like $10,000. And the Building and Finance, like, we need this now. And we had to wait about 3 weeks for the next board meeting for it to be approved. And so there's starting to be some questions asked on what that superintendent purchasing authority limit is and what that looks like. There was a desire to maybe raise that. And so we went out and looked at different schools, did a comparative analysis of districts between 4,000 and 6,000, which is where we will be for the next, between now and the next 10 years or so. And we found that purchasing authority ranged from about 10,000 to 100,000, which is a huge range, obviously. And so we were proposing moving that from 5,000 to 25,000, kind of in the lower middle of that range. And we believe that'd be good not only for now with the size and scope of our district, but also for several years here. So we wouldn't be coming back to you in 3 years saying we've grown 1,000 kids, we should change something. So I feel pretty good about what that number would be. Questions on those?
I think one of the things also we've discussed is with that purchasing, and it's been a long time since that's been updated. So it's just not the size of our district, but the purchasing power too. $5,000 doesn't get you today what it did 10, 15 years ago.
3 years ago. Very good. All right, I'll go on to C.
Yes.
The third one is our new policies, and so all three of these policies, again, they're the same batch that came from our special education updates, and so there are the three that were recommended to become new policies, again, things that we have been doing, things that are best practice, but they want to see specific policies associated with each of them. And we spent quite a bit of time in our policy committee meeting a few weeks ago going through each one of these and the language and why. And so I think the policy committee felt comfortable with them.
Any questions for Dr. Claus on those? All right.
If you asked a sped policy question, I was immediately kicking it over to Dan, so.
Sounds like it went well in committee, which is good.
Yeah, there was a lot of good discussion.
All right, the next item on the agenda is discussion of our annual report. Mrs. Hahn?
Also
It
running.
is not linked in here. I thought that one was it. So we are just working on the annual report. Right now, the goal is that will go shortly after the Nebraska Department of Education. Sorry, I should go up to the mic, so.
Yes,
For
please
YouTube,
do.
sorry, I should know better. Sorry about that. So the goal is that it will go out in late November, possibly early December, just based on the timelines of the Nebraska Department of Education of when those test scores will be released, that we can release those to the public. So we are currently working on those. We will make sure that those get added to the agenda on the website, but we kind of went through, it's kind of going to be laid out the same as what last year's was. We'll have a welcome letter, talk about the programs that we have. We'll do both statistics district-wide for both staff and students. And then we'll go into kind of a profile look for each of our buildings, along with our athletics and activity success that we had for last year. Then we'll also talk about our finances. So we'll do our budget, income, where does it come from, where does the money go, our levy, and bond information as well. And then, we're talking that. And then we also just have information available, kind of follows last year, so. So if there's anything that you guys see that you want in that, or anything different from last year, we can definitely do that as well.
And it was pretty comprehensive last year. I don't
Yeah.
remember anything that I was thinking was glaring. Does anybody else have any suggestions for her? Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. All right, the next item up is a review and discussion on the Morgan Ridge site, which was voted on last July, July 2022. And Dr. Claus is going to take us through a review of that. And I may have asked for this, so sorry for the extra work, but I know we had 3 new board members, and I know you were getting up to speed on this, so I thought it would be kind of a good refresher for everybody just to remember what happened.
Actually, it was really good for me personally because they kind of knew bits and pieces, but not all of it. And so I was able to dig in a little bit more and really appreciate that. And I thought this might be something that because this will be going on for so many years, that maybe we'll bring forward every October just to remind each other of where we're at in the process. So Morgan Ridge site, the Morgan Ridge development is the proposed site for the 6th Elementary at Bennington Public Schools. I want to be very clear, the 6th Elementary, we're talking a long time down the road. This is a future planning thing that we were doing. The board approved the purchase of this in July of 2022. And so this land is ready for us. Okay, let's start with the location. It's located on a road that's yet to be developed that connects Rainwood Road. Rainwood Road is the road that would go out to Heritage, all the way over to 168th Street. And so as you can see, kind of where her cursor is, where it says the school site, there would be a road constructed all the way along there, and the school would lie right in the middle of that plot of land within what is going to be called the Morgan Ridge development. Kind of the history with that is July 22, the following was approved, and there's a lot of assumptions in here as well. Obviously, we don't know all the final details, especially when we start finding out multiple years. And so the land will be purchased for $572,812 from the land companies who we're purchasing that from, and we are expected to make a payment on that in April of 2024, so that would be this school year. It's 15 acres, or just over 15 acres, and the agreed upon cost was right at $38,000 per acre. Rough grading is our portion of the grading of that area that we'd have to pay for as well, is going to be $250,000, and they would expect that again on April 1st of this year. So those two are coming up pretty quick during this school year. The next two are special assessments. So special assessments would be items that are levied within that area from those SIDs or the county. So they're generally levied to pay some type of improvement within the street and the sewer. And so we'd have a cost of that along with the SIDs and the county and everybody else as we have a joint agreement. And so we would not necessarily plan to pay those until it starts to be developed. And so we're probably talking 2027-ish timeframe. We don't know that exactly, but we're estimating those out to be about $280,000. The last cost of that is the in lieu of ad valorem. I had absolutely no idea what that meant a month ago, and now I sort of know. But essentially, it would be payments that we would make to help the local municipalities offset loss of the property taxes in there during the development portion. And so we'd have to pay that again. It's an estimate, and so they're estimating about $640,000, but we would not pay that portion until the 2027 or as development took place. And so those are kind of future planning for us. New information, and so I don't know if this was talked about or not last July, to be quite honest. As it starts to get developed, the developers, the SIDs, the county, and ourselves all have a little bit of a stake in the road, construction of the road as it went through there. I'm sure that was talked about, but there wasn't really a dollar value associated with it. And so there have been meetings over the last month or so trying to get those groups together and start talking about who takes what percentage and all of that. And so our portion of it is tentatively scheduled to cost about $750,000. And that would cover, actually go to the next slide, please. This is really hard to see, but it's the one that I've got. This portion right here is where the school system would sit. And so they're asking that we would pay, Douglas County is going to pay the bottom half of the road, the whole south part of the road, the entire length. But then the SIDs and ourselves would have a joint agreement for payment of the north part of the road. And so they're asking for payment of just our portion, what would be in front of the frontage of our school proposed site. And so that would be roughly $750,000 at this point. That's what they're estimating. And so where there's X's, that would be one of the developers or one of the SIDs. The little O's area would be us, and then the part without any graphics on it would be another one of the SIDs. So if that helps you see the visual there. As we add all those up, those were kind of all done separately. It comes to just under $2.5 million for the future planning of this site and the development of the area. Obviously, if you have SIDs surrounding all of this, the anticipation would be that all of those homes at some point get developed, and there's going to be a portion of them that have kids as well. And so this school area would become needed. It's not today. This is not a today thing. It's a future planning thing. Something to keep in mind, so that 2.5 million all in, on the right-hand side, we do have estimated payment coming from Celebrity Homes for an area that they purchased of land, to kind of reimbursement for road costs that we had paid, that they are now going to have to reimburse us on, much like we're doing in this area, of just under 1.5 million. And so there is an offset to the Morgan Ridge with what's potentially coming from Celebrity Homes as well. How we would pay for that is out of our special building fund, which we have just under $12.5 million, just over $12.5 million right now. And so what we've started to do is earmark funds to pay for this project out of there. That way, when they do come due this year in 2027, potentially 2029, we have the funds available to pay for them at that time. So kind of a timeline, and I misspoke, or I didn't get it changed on there because this is new information that I did on this part. The land and the rough grading, we've got to pay those in April of this year. That's already been agreed to. The payment for the ad valorem and the road construction project, the payment of ad valorem, I'm guess is in 2027-ish, depends on development. That's kind of the same with the road construction project, depending on development. The special assessments of 280 is actually to be contingent upon us passing a bond or actually having some type of construction plans. And so that portion we would wait on. I put roughly 2029. I don't know when we're going to decide exactly at this point. It's down the road, but that is the last part. It would actually, we'd have to have a building permit in order to pay that money. Next steps. So between now and next October is kind of what I thought on this slide. What are we going to do over the next year? We need to close on the land and then pay for the grading by April 1. Finalize a plan for the joint public agreement for the construction of that road. And then, did we skip one of the unknowns or not? Sorry, I can go back. Maybe I just skipped over it. Okay, the bottom part, I apologize, but I need to go back and talk about this. So the plan that we showed you is stopped. That was not all the way to 168th Street at this time. The reason is the SIDs and the school and the SIDs, and then there's the dam that's being put in there, and it's a big unknown. Is the county paying for the dam? Is the NRD? Are we, as our joint public agreement, who's paying for the extension of that road all the way to 168 as it goes over the dam? That's all unknown at this moment, and so that's something that we're going to have to continue to figure out what that looks like through this, through our joint public agreement with all those different entities. So I apologize, I guess I'm glossed over that. And so that was our number 3 throughout the course of the year, is figuring out what the rest of that road looks like. What is the future plan out of that road? Who's going to pay for the cost of that? And then preparing ourselves financially to do this both this year and for the next 3 or 4 years and make sure we're all set up for that. And then just monitor the growth of our elementary sites. So we're, we put the 2029 on there, but that doesn't mean anything. Is that maybe 2030, is it maybe 2027? Just continue to monitor the growth in our elementaries, and especially in that area as it's being developed up. That'll kind of get into this year. Questions?
Yeah, so I do. So when I'm looking at this, let's say they start developing that area, we're not required to build, right? Unless we have the need, so we can move them. Where do they zone now for Heritage, where the lines are?
Yeah, Heritage.
So they would go to Heritage till Heritage was full and necessary for us to move or redraw lines or build.
Yep.
Whatever that is.
Yeah, we'd have the site available if need be, but we don't have to utilize it necessarily.
And this was the corridor that we anticipated the most growth, kind of the central area of the district. And so this was, basically to secure a site for future growth we anticipated down the road. But obviously it's not here quite yet. But we anticipated so much planning had already taken place through that corridor that we were worried if we didn't secure land right away, we would have nowhere to put a school and there'd be just a substantial number of homes in that little central area. So it was trying to be forthright and, trying to find a spot for the school in the future.
Sure. So. And don't quote me on this, I think there's like 3,000 homes platted at this point, and a big chunk of them are running right through between 168 and 156. I mean, you drive by and you see all the roads that are developed, there's just no homes on them yet, but they're going to be at some point. So I think that was probably a pretty wise move on behalf of the district.
And thanks for reviewing that too, because, if you think about it, the Stratford and the middle school south, we did our own development of that. And so this is slightly different, and we're pairing up with a developer that has an existing neighborhood. And so we're kind of in the opposite position. So just thanks for the reminder on how that works. It's been a while, so.
Absolutely.
Oh, I do have another question. Did you say we'd have to pass a bond if we did need to build, or is that bond already been passed?
No, you'd have to pass it.
We'd have to pass a new bond on that.
If we were going to build there, either we'd have to have a plan to pay for that building, or we'd have to pass a bond to do so.
But he was talking about the special assessments wouldn't be due until we actually started construction.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I just want to make sure I understood that. If that was something that bond had already been passed on this site, it has not.
No, this is just purchasing of the land to prepare for if we need it in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from anybody? All right, I think this brings us to the last item on our agenda, which is a proposed executive session to discuss strategy for certificated staff negotiations. As information for the crowd, we do not anticipate action coming from this session. So there is I'll make a motion. I move that we enter into a closed session for the purpose of holding a strategy session regarding collective bargaining.
Second.
Thank you, Jeremy. Jody, will you call the roll, please?
Jeremy?
Yes.
Christie? Yes. Kara?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Motion passes. And we will reconvene in here when the session is over, but again, no action is anticipated. All right. Thank you.
Have a good